morning, y'all. Welcome back to the channel. If you are not new here, if you are actually a subscriber, especially within the last 30 days, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate y'all coming along this journey with me. And if you are brand new, hey girl, how you doing? My name is Joy. I'm actually a certified personal trainer and group fitness coach out of ATL, of course. And so on this channel, we work out, we talk about mindset, we talking about wellness, and today we're talking about nutrition. So on last week's episode, we actually discussed how we can never diet again and still have a successful weight loss journey. So if you want to see how we are ditching the diets in 2023, check out my last video. So it's actually going to be a little more of a serious conversation today. This topic can be triggering for some people, so I kind of want to put like a little disclaimer. Now, personally, I've had my run-ins with this kind of condition, and you may have as well, or know somebody close to you who have their own. All right, now make sure he okay now. Maybe you know somebody who is around you who may have had their own dealings with this kind of condition, and I'm talking about food addiction. Now, it's important for us to just put a definition to a thing. That way we're all sure that we are coming from the same place, okay? So give y'all my real, okay, Webster definition. Not Webster, but I did look it up. So food addiction is used to describe compulsive eating habits in people and can be classified as either behavioral or neural. In my personal experience and working with clients and other people and just talking about our different bouts with our health and things like that, a lot of us have developed a form of food addiction just out of behaviors that we've had repeated over the years that our body has grown to be accustomed to. Things could have started off as like a compulsion where you might just feel like you're a little bit more picky, you want to eat a little bit more, easily ready to just grab snacks or pull into a drive-through, and you're not as in control over your compulsion to eat. And over time, with continuing those same habits, we actually form new connections within our brain that tells us that, well, to kind of break it back. So for one, when we eat, our body feels happy. Like, good food makes us feel good. We all know that feeling naturally. But what happens internally is that our body releases dopamine. That's our hormone. That's like our feel good, happy hormone. So as we are developing these habits and we're pulling up in these drive-thrus, we're eating foods that are high in sugars, high in fats, and that just sends so many waves through our body, and we feel like this food is good. So these foods give us a sense of happiness when we eat them. But then what can happen is that right afterwards, you kind of feel that guilt. Like, I know I should not have eaten that. That was too much. That wasn't going to be good for me. I'm going to regret that later. I'm going to see that pop up somewhere later on. And that guilt is really what makes, at least in my opinion, a food compulsion turn into a food addiction, because the guilt that comes with it is really what drives our actions from there. People can handle guilt typically within 3 different ways. So either we're going to feel shame, we're going to suppress, or we're going to disregard. And to break it down further, shame is just like us beating ourselves down over making that food choice. Like, oh, you know you shouldn't be eating that. You're so fat, you're so greedy, and we're just saying all of these harsh, mean things to ourselves because we just had our logic sense come back and take over, and we know that logically that was not a good choice. But before that, we were running on hormones and reactions and things like that. That's us trying to shame ourselves for eating. But if you don't do that, you can fall into where you might try to suppress. Personally, I can fall, or I've had falling into that lane of suppression where you try to act like it didn't happen. This is where you can try to, throw away food wrappers, trying to hide food wrappers and things like that, hide snacks around the house because you don't want anybody else to know that you are not, sticking to what you said you was gonna do. You don't want somebody to find out and then they want to try to, bring it up in your face like, oh, but you said you wanted to. Nobody wants to deal with that, so we try to hide it. And sometimes it could be hiding it from ourselves if we're trying to be truly honest, like to be fully transparent. Like, even every now and then, before I kind of got back into my weight loss and trying to eat healthy and my meditation more recently, last year, it was like I wouldn't want my boyfriend to see that I was like eating these little things here and there. So I would eat it when I'm gone. I will be out and about, and I will pull into a little store, a little convenience store, a little grocery store, a little whatever, and I would have my treat. I would have my little donut. I would have my little whatever. And it didn't help that at the time I was also doing Instacart for groceries. So I'm all up in the Publix bakery area, just like, child, just one donut ain't gonna hurt nobody. Like, I'm not going to ruin everything, which you're not gonna ruin everything with one donut, but it was like one donut for me almost every time I went to do a delivery. So that was like, okay. But that is our way of trying to cope with our decisions. Like, I don't want to face what I've done, so I'm trying to act like it never happened, kind of hide it to make it seem like it's not that big of a deal. And then the next reaction we can have is to completely disregard it. It's like, well, I've already done it. I already ate the food. I already took in the calories. I already messed up. So what's the point of me acting like I gotta do everything right now? I mean, what's done is done. So people with that kind of reaction, it's like you continue on with maybe eating the food that's not as good for you, not as beneficial for you, and continuing to build upon unhealthy habits because you kind of just psych yourself out to feel like it doesn't matter either way because I've already failed. And that hurt from feeling like you failed yourself, it's just like, instead of really sitting with it and figuring out, what made you decide against what you originally thought, you just don't want to deal with that at all. It's almost like you can probably know that you were going to mess up at some point. So when it happens, you're like, well, I knew at some point I was going to eat the food anyway. So it's no shock to me. You know what I'm saying? Like something like that. This is our typical reactions that we are having now, but the beauty of it is that there is a fourth way that we can react to the guilt of not eating the best food for us, and that is that we can accept what we have decided to do. We can not allow ourselves to feel shamed or try to suppress it or try to disregard what happened. And we can just decide that going forward, I'm going to just make a better choice because I know better and I want to do better. So you have to practice better. So let's go ahead and really understand what causes food addiction so we can figure out how to break away from it. So to start, genetics is one way that somebody can develop food addiction. People can be born with certain genetic makeups and codes that make them more easily prone to developing different addictions. That's how you can have families that have like generations of alcoholism or drug abuse, and food addiction is one as well. It's just not considered to be a disorder like other addictions can be. And because it's so similar to other addictions, like diabetes can be a thing in your family where it could be passed down through genetics, if not just through the environment. You know, the culture within your family, especially within the Black community, you know, food is how we show love and why we come together. There's food at every kind of event, funerals, weddings, graduations. Somebody's always going to be cooking and eating, especially within our culture and different cultures as well. So between that and then having different social groups and wanting to go out with friends and things like that can all contribute to at least us not being able to manage our food addictions or being able to break away from them, or can contribute to us further like developing these addictions because we're constantly being exposed to the same kind of foods. And then the next cause for food addiction can be psychological. So this can be triggered by things like stress, depression, and anxiety. You know, when life happens to us and things cause us to go into a more depressed state or a more anxious state of being, we can turn to food to cope or to feel better because it does release all those happy hormones that says this feels good and this is, you know, where we can find our happiness within all this darkness. So I would say personally for me as well, food was one way that I really got through any bout that I may have had with depression. And for me, it was kind of like seasonal. It was because I'm very strong-willed and being positive. I make it a point to try to be positive within my life despite. But you know, at some point we can get beat down by all that life can you know, make us have to take on. So being aware of that and being aware that that can be a trigger that will cause us to want to turn to food is one thing that can kind of help us to also be able to break out of it. But I'll talk about how we do that later on in the video. So to kind of put it all together, habits and repeated experiences can be the building blocks for somebody developing a form of food addiction. The goal is to really get back to balance. So the body loves to feel balanced. So when it comes to food addiction in particular, that's mostly within our brain and within our hormones. So we have D2 receptors and we also have dopamine. And when these two things bind together, it helps our body drive that feeling of we're feeling good, this is a good sensation, things like that. But when it's not balanced and we're in too low levels of D2 or dopamine, our body isn't able to really regulate itself to know if this should feel good for us or if it doesn't. And then you combine that with our leptin hormone, and that is what controls our hunger and us feeling full. So if your hormones are also not balanced, that can control your leptin levels. So if your leptin levels are too low, your body cannot tell when you are full. But on the other hand, your brain is still telling you that these foods taste good. So you're stuck between it tastes good, I'm not full, it tastes good, I'm not full, and that can lead to us possibly overeating. So now let's get into what the symptoms of food addiction are. So for one, it can be craving certain foods, and for us mostly that could be sugary filled foods. A lot of our diets within America, if we bought foods that are like readily available, typically are high in sugar or high in bad fats or processed carbs. So our body tends to crave that, or it has been trained to crave that. So having those kind of cravings is one symptom. That goes into us making impulsive food choices. So if you've ever just been like, you know what, I think I'm hungry, or you got hungry, like really hungry, really fast, almost out of nowhere, you quickly just boom, boom, pulled into your local, you know, fast food, drive-through window, whatever, that's you acting more impulsively. You can also feel like you're constantly hungry. Binge eating is also a symptom, as well as having severe irritability when you're hungry. So like people say, like, you need to eat you with Snickers because you know when you hungry. That's also a symptom of a possible food addiction. And then also weight gain being a more obvious symptom. But what we all really want to know is, how am I able to beat food addiction? How am I able to get back control over my body, over my food, over my eating? And the first way that I will always recommend for anybody is to do a lot of self-healing and therapy. For a lot of us, it's past traumas and past events that has turned what started off as just having bad habits and turned into us having more compulsions because of our ineffective way to manage our emotions. So if we are able to find more healthy alternatives when we are feeling more depressed or feeling down, or figuring out those root causes and finding solutions for those root causes first, can make a major impact on being able to break through having any kind of food addiction or food compulsion. You also want to have a plan. You want to write it down, make it plain, because you want to be able to see yourself progress through this as well. Whether that's you journaling, you know what's going on with you currently, going through more of that self-help healing, or making a plan as far as your nutrition, being like, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to at least reduce the chance of me breaking into a bad habit. So kind of like, for an example with me, I typically, when I bring any kind of junk foods or whatever like that home, which was bad in the beginning as well, but now I've gotten better to not also buy it when I'm out. But the main thing is that when I'm here, when I'm home, when I'm working, I'm much more easy to just, you know, I'm just go in the kitchen and just go ahead and grab a little whatever. So maybe not having certain like triggering foods around, or allowing yourself a certain day or a certain time of the week to go ahead and enjoy those foods that you still love. Just like how we said in the last video, just because we're trying to get healthy does not mean that we can't still enjoy the foods that we love. It's all about managing our portions. So if you say, hey, let's say every Saturday I'm going to go and have me a nice little donut in the afternoon because I like that, or I'm going out with my friends for a Sunday brunch and I'm not going to be worried about all the calories in this little mimosa. I'm just, you know, have a good time. Cheers to the girls. Clink, clink, clink. you know, allow yourself the freedom to know, like, hey, I can look forward to this day or this certain time or this certain event, because then I can just have a little nostalgia and enjoy the things that I've enjoyed for years. Something else as well is regulating your hormone levels again. So like I said, we're going to have a video probably going to be next week when we actually go over our hormones and the major hormones that we need to be, you know, more concerned about, how they get unbalanced, how to get them back balanced, that whole nine. So if you have not already, stay tuned to the channel, turn that bell on so when that video drops. But what's also important is understanding when we need to reach out for help. Because sometimes we can't do everything ourselves. When it comes to food addiction, this comes on a spectrum. Okay, so there are people who can, you know, break out of a more mild case of food addiction where just rebuilding healthy habits, focusing on nutrition, just focusing on those things can help them break out of it. But sometimes we may need to turn to a professional service, a professional person within that kind of industry who can really walk you through how to make those kind of changes in a way that is going to be the most healthy for you. So I say to say, do not feel any shame or feel anything about seeking out help. These services are here for people like you, people like us who have these kind of things that we're dealing with. You are not alone. So please seek help if you feel like you need it. But then outside of that as well, find your support group. And I say find it because it may not always just be right next to you. Sometimes our family and friends, even though we love them dearly, they can't always help guide us through every hard situation in life. Sometimes you need to find somebody who doesn't know you so personally, who maybe just be on the outside looking in, but you can feel comfortable sharing with them and being open with them. Different Facebook groups or even in-person groups in your area. Just talking to people, you know, going to certain health clubs that specialize in this kind of stuff. That way, you know, for sure, everybody who is in the room is here to fight the same battle. You know what I'm saying? Because this is very important to have that kind of support. If you're not able to have that support for yourself, especially starting out, find it, seek it out. Talk about what you're going through and you will attract people who are going to help you out. But with that, you guys, this is going to be the end of this week's episode. I hope you guys had a lot of takeaways this week. Definitely give this video a like if you made it this far. Comment down below what your biggest takeaway was as well. Like I said, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way, every time we work out together, we have these conversations on the couch and just really get to understand more about how our body is supposed to work and function. You will be in the room with us, sis. So, to not make a long video longer, until next time, you guys, remember to always keep it moving.